Good, Diane?
Yep.
Okay, I want to call to order the St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, 2025 meeting of the Delray Beach Planning and Zoning Board. Ms. Miller, if you could call a roll, please.
Jeffrey Meiselman.
Here.
Chris Brown.
Here.
Deirdre Strong.
Here.
Mitch Katz.
Here.
Allison Thomas.
Here.
Judy Malika.
Here.
Gregory Snyder.
Here. First item is are there any changes to the agenda? None from staff. Hearing none, can we?
Motion, please.
Motion
Have a
to
mo-
approve the agenda.
We have
Second.
a motion by Mr. Katz, second by Ms. Thomas. Could you-
Jeffrey Meiselman.
Yes.
Chris Brown.
Yeah.
Deirdre Strong.
Yes.
Mitch Katz.
Yes.
Allison Thomas.
Yes.
Judy Malika.
Yes.
Gregory Snyder.
Yes, okay, the minutes is approved. We have no minutes. At this point, I would like to swear in anyone who wishes to speak to the meeting tonight. Please stand.
Please raise your right hand. By the authority vested in me, the notary of the state of Florida, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Okay, now we would like to hear any comments from the public on any items that are not on the agenda. Does anyone want to come forward? Seeing none? Next, presentations. And we have no presentations? No?
Sorry, no
We
presentation.
have no presentations. Quasi-judicial items are next. I'll read the quasi-judicial rules. That's not the rules. Here we go. Okay. We'll have an item number. Staff will enter the item into the record. We will take ex parte communications. Applicants will present. Public will make comments. Staff. Here we go. So this hearing shall be conducted in accordance with the City of Delray Beach quasi-judicial rules. The applicant and the city shall each be permitted to present their case. The public shall be allowed to speak for 3 minutes each, or for a maximum of 6 minutes if the person represents an organization or group of people who are present but agree not to speak. The board members and staff and the applicant may be allowed to cross-examine a witness. The city or the applicant will be allowed to offer rebuttal testimony. And the decision to approve or deny an application may not legally be made upon personal views as to whether a project is a good project or not, nor may a decision be based on the number of citizens who support or oppose a particular project. The law requires that all decisions must be made on the basis of whether the project meets the requirements of law, the comprehensive plan, and the land development regulations. And with that, Ms. Dostry, would you enter, or Ms. Howell, whoever, enter the first?
Yes. Thank you, board members. Alexia Howard, senior planner. For the record, I'd like to enter file number 2023-189, and the applicant is here tonight to present.
Thank you. At this point, is there any ex parte communication? Ms.
Drove by
Mull?
the property and received an email from Mr. Schiller, but no communication.
Mr. Strawn?
Saying drove by the property, received an email. I thought I sent it, but apparently it never got through to you. But no communication. No.
Mr. Brown?
I spoke briefly with him, yeah.
I visited the site and I spoke with Mr. Schiller.
Spoke with Mr. Schiller.
Received an email from Mr. Schiller.
Okay, thank
Nice
you.
to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Yeah.
Okay. Applicant, would you like to
Yes, I will get
present
started.
your case?
First off, before I begin, happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody. My name is Neil Schiller with Government Law Group, 137 Northwest 1st Street, right across the street from City Hall. I'm here tonight representing Stom Development Group for a final plat and your recommendation of this final plat. The property at which we're talking about is 1201 George Bush Boulevard. What we're asking for is to divide the property into 3 townhome lots. We are under the existing 1.0 FAR, and the use is consistent with the existing development pattern. In fact, you can even see on this picture that you can see all the units that are townhomes there. There are also townhomes in there, and right next to the site too. So we do think that the use is consistent with the existing development pattern. Previously, the site was a professional office building. Then on November 7th, 2023, the City Commission approved the rezoning from residential office, RO, to medium density residential, RM. And then on December 17th, 2024, the Commission affirmed the administratively approved land use plan. Site plan, excuse me. So we approved, our site plan was consistent with the code. It was therefore administratively approved, and the commission upheld that administrative approval. This is the approved site plan. You can see 3 distinct units, a left, right, and a center, all front onto St. Andrews. This is the proposed plat that is facing north. You can see Andrews Avenue on the left-hand side and George Bush on the south, and those are the 3 different individual properties that will be the result of this plat. So you do have some required findings that this is the resulting use of the land is consistent with the land use map. There are 3 townhomes, and that is permitted within RM zoning. RM zoning is compatible and consistent with the TRN future land use. You can see that here right from the comprehensive plan, table NDC1. Here's transitional land use designation, and an implementing zoning district is RM. Concurrency. So we have to look at traffic, schools, water, sewer, solid waste, and drainage, all to ensure that this project doesn't make any one of those tip the scale so that we are not concurrent, and this doesn't. Again, this is 3 separate townhomes. We are actually decreasing the amount of traffic on this site with 36 trips that are going away. Sufficient capacity at the schools, water, sewer, solid waste, and drainage. Then we look at consistency with the comprehensive plan, and I've just highlighted 2 of the many different policies that we are consistent with. NDC 1.113, which is applying the most restrictive residential zoning district that's appropriate, and then policy HOU 1.18 is accommodate densities in established residential areas that promote compatibility with prevailing neighborhood character, which this does. And then you look at for the required findings, compliance with the LDRs. The applicant will comply and has complied with all the LDRs. Sites for site plan or plat action. So you actually have different standards for site plans and plats. Building design and landscaping and lighting shall be such that they do not create unwarranted distractions or blockage of visibility as it pertains to traffic circulations. And as you can imagine, these concerns were adequately addressed in the administrative approval by your staff. All development shall provide pedestrian, bicycle, vehicular interconnections to adjacent properties where possible and include accessible routes from entry points of publicly accessible buildings, the sidewalk network, in accordance with the ADA. Each unit has direct access to Andrews Avenue. I'm going to just read these last few into the record just so they're part of the record. Open space enhancements or recreational amenities shall be provided. Our site plan meets all of those requirements. Any proposed street widening or modifications due to traffic circulation shall be evaluated by the city, and the city engineer has approved the site plan and the plat. Development of residentially zoned vacant land shall be planned in a manner consistent with adjacent development regardless of zoning designations. And as you've seen, this block is primarily townhomes. We're just adding 3 more. We are consistent with the existing development pattern. The property shall be developed or redeveloped in a manner so that the use, intensity, and density are appropriate. We're consistent with the existing development pattern, and townhomes are pervasive in the area, and we're only doing 3 townhomes. The impact, even measured by a traffic perspective, is less with these townhomes than the existing professional office building. Development shall provide a variety of housing types that accommodates the city's growing and socioeconomically diverse population to meet the goals, objectives, and policies with the housing element. This is a small site, making development, residential development, limited, especially with the existing development pattern, to be consistent with that. So we believe that the 3 townhomes is the most reasonable use of the land. Consideration given to the fact that the development will have on safety, livability, and sustainability of surrounding neighborhoods and residential areas. Again, this is 3 townhomes in an existing block and area that is pervasive of multifamily and townhome uses. Development shall not be approved if traffic associated with the development would create a new high accident location or exacerbate an existing situation. Again, just 22 chips will be generated from the townhomes, the 3 townhomes, which is 36 less than the existing previous use. And that use, intersection of Andrews and George Bush has not been proven to be a traffic hazard or a traffic issue. And then we talk about tot lots and recreational areas, which isn't applicable because we're only doing 3 units, not 25 or more. Development shall not exceed the maximum limits, which we have not exceeding any of the limits in your code. Again, we did not ask for any waivers, any variances, anything like that, which is why we were approved administratively. Development shall meet the intent of CSR energy efficiency, which we have noted and have included into the project. And then just a couple of renderings. This is what it's going to look like from the front and from the back. And you can see 3 distinct units, which hopefully you will approve the recommendation of tonight. We are here to answer any questions. I forgot to introduce my client, Sean McAllister from Stom Development Group. He's here tonight from Philadelphia. He thanks you for having this hearing today. And we appreciate any questions that you may have and your vote to recommend this to the City Commission.
Thank you. So, Ms. Howell?
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so this is for a plat of 1201 George Bush Boulevard. It is located just above a 1/4 of an acre, located on the Barrier Island on George Bush Boulevard, east of the bridge at the northeast corner of George Bush and Andrews Avenue, with a medium residential zoning district and underlying land use designation of transitional. Currently, there is a 3,984 square foot office built in 1979. So the original plat was platted in 1951, part of the Blue Seas subdivision. Highlighted in red, it's a portion of Lot 7 and a total of Lot 6. And on November 7th of 2023, it was rezoned from R1 to RM for this application for the development of 3 townhomes. And in late 2024, the level 2 was administratively approved and upheld by the appealable process. And this plat is necessary to establish the fee simple lots required to implement the approved development. Here's an exhibit of the existing conditions of the lot. Here you can see the office building at the corner of George Bush and Andrews Avenue. Here we have the adjacent property. To the north is a multifamily. To the south we have townhomes, and to the east is the Valhalla condominiums. And so the request before you is a recommendation to City Commission for a major plat subdivision for 3-story 3-townhome unit. And this is just a rendering with the lot line showing the subdivision. Here's the proposed plat. Stam 1201 George Bush Boulevard. So there are a few dedications and easements proposed. I will go quickly over them. Tract R is along Andrews Avenue. This is for the future improvements such as sidewalks, as well as a corner clip at the corner for site visibility purposes. Just after that is a 10-foot general utility easement. And there also is a 5-foot drainage easement for each lot running in light blue all around the property, as well as a 5-foot limited access easement along George Bush Boulevard to establish Andrew Avenues as the frontage. So no access of vehicles is allowed from George Bush Boulevard. And there is a 5-foot access easement for access for Lot 2 from Lot 3 on Andrews Avenue. So really quick, the zoning district is compatible with the land use, and the proposed use is a permitted use by right within the RM zoning district. The floor area proposed is 0.98, which is consistent with the table NDC 1. Overall, the project is consistent with the comprehensive goals, objectives, and policies, and the development meets concurrency in regards to water, sewer. Oops, I went there too fast. Water, sewer, solid waste, drainage, and transportation, as well as public school capacity. The development upon the building permit issuance will be required to submit a $500 per dwelling unit fee for impact, park impact. Overall, the development meets is generally consistent with the applicable sections of the LDR, specifically the medium residential zoning district development standards matrix and the standards for site plan and plat actions. And before the board today, we have 3 motions: motion to approve, motion to deny, or continue with direction. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. At this point, does anyone in the public want to make any comments? Seeing none, does the staff or applicant have any rebuttal cross-examination?
My only rebuttal, Mr. Chair, is I just want to thank staff. They've been working with us cooperatively for the better part of almost 2 years now, and we hope to bring this to a reality. So thank you.
Thank you.
No,
Anything?
thank you.
All right. Board comments. Mr. Mason.
I have no comments.
Mr. Katz?
I just have a question for staff. If this project is approved administratively and then approved by the commission, and so it's already approved, why does the plat have to come up to us for a quasi judicial hearing?
That's just the process that we have for a plat approval. Anything with that's considered a major subdivision plat comes to the Planning and Zoning Board.
Gotcha. Okay. Maybe something to look at.
No question, no comment.
Judy? Yeah.
No comments.
Mr.
No comment.
Ms. Thomas?
I think it's a great addition.
Okay. I really have nothing to say. I would like to hear a motion.
Recommend the approval to the City Commission for certification of the final plat, STAM 1201 George Bush Boulevard, associated with the creation of 3 fee simple lots for the property currently addressed at 1201 George Bush Boulevard, finding that the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and meets criteria set forth in the land development regulations.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Mulligan, second by Ms. Thomas. And Ms.
Jeffrey
Miller, if you would
Meiselman?
call a roll.
Yes.
Chris Brown,
Yes.
Deidre Strawn,
Yes.
Mitch Katz,
Yes.
Allison Thomas,
Yes.
Judy Malika,
Yes.
Gregory Snyder.
Yes. Show the motion's passed 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
7-0.
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Howell.
Just like to enter city case file number 2024-055 into the record, which is a recommendation to City Commission for the certification of a major plat for Fifth Avenue Townhomes.
Thank you. At this point, is there any ex parte on this?
No, just drove by the site.
Same
Ms.
visit on
Brown?
the site.
Mr. Brown?
No.
I'm familiar with the site.
Mr. Katz?
I guess I sort of talked to one of the applicants, just about why this is a quasi judicial hearing question, same one I asked earlier, but, that's it.
Okay, Ms. Mealy?
No questions.
And I just visited the site. So at this point, the applicant, you're welcome to proceed.
Thank you very much. Tim Weber with Aquest Development and Fifth Avenue Townhome or Fifth Avenue Delray LLC, the owner of the property. So we've been in front of city staff now for a better part of a year for this project. This is the project that was approved in October of 2024. You see in front of you here. The project is on about 1/3 of an acre. It's 5 townhomes, 5 3-story townhomes fronting on Southeast Fifth Avenue. In the rear, there's garage access from the alleyway that cuts through the Caspian Apartments to the south. This is the location of the property. Right now, it's currently two lots, 142 and 152 Southeast Fifth Avenue. This is the floor plan or the site plan for what was approved in October of last year. Again, 5 fee simple townhomes. Overall site plan, we're way under the density that's allowed here in the CBD district. Here is the 5 the final plat that we're proposing here for the 5 lots. Again, this is an infill project. We have already demoed the building, so we got approval for demolition, as you've all seen. So we already have the wrap up on the site. We have the fence up. Moving forward on that. So this is really just the last stage in our approvals for the project. But we appreciate your time.
Thank you. Ms. Rosenberg.
All right. Good evening again. So just to go over the property information, the property is located at 142 and 152 Southeast Fifth Avenue. It's about 0.35 acres located within the Central Business District in the Central Core Subdistrict, and it also has a land use designation of Commercial Core. The request tonight is to replat the property to establish 5 fee simple lots affiliated with an approved residential townhouse development. Diving into some history, the property was platted, or the properties were platted in 1895 as 261.43 foot by 125.02 foot lots. On October 23rd, 2024, Level 2 site plan was approved for the construction of a 3-story, 5-unit townhouse development. The proposed plat establishes the new fee simple lots for each new townhouse property. And so this is the surrounding properties. The property is surrounded by CBD zoning on all sides, with the Caspian mixed-use development to the south and to the west, a vacation rental agency to the north, and retail and offices to the east. Here is a rendering of the approved townhouse development depicting the location of the lot lines. And then here is the proposed plat. So we have a 2-foot right-of-way dedication for the alley in the rear, which is in blue. We have a 10-foot general utility easement and a 10-foot drainage easement to the rear of the properties. That's in green and yellow. And then there's a 3-foot access easement to allow rear access to the internal lots, which is lots 2 through 4, which is in red. Primary vehicular access to the lots is provided off the alleyway, which is where the driveways will be located. So the lots range from 2,748 square feet to 3,410 square feet, with the end lots, lot 1 and 5 being the largest, and then the internal lots being slightly narrower. Going into the required findings, the CBD zoning district is an implementing zoning district of the commercial core land use, and multifamily residential is permitted as a principal use with a maximum density of 30 dwelling units per acre. The approved site plan was approved at a density of 15 dwelling units per acre. Also, the project meets the concurrency for water and sewer, solid waste, drainage, and school capacity. Park impact fees are assessed at $500 per unit at the time of building permit. And regarding traffic. Based on the traffic performance standards letter from Palm Beach County, the proposed development is anticipated to add about 34 trips or daily trips, and it does meet the TPS of Palm Beach County. Regarding consistency with the Always Delray Comprehensive Plan, the plan speaks to infill development, variation of housing type, and also the important function of alleys to disperse traffic and provide access to properties. So the plat does support the approved development, which enhances the pedestrian realm, activates the streetscape. The residential component does expand the housing supply, and the residential or the project establishes new residential units for the area of the city, which is identified for higher density residential development. And the approved use, density, and height is generally compatible with the surrounding areas. LDR section 3.2.3 goes over specific standards for the plat application to help mitigate any potential negative impacts on the surrounding area. And the proposed plat, which implements the approved site plan, is generally compliant with these standards. Further, LDR section 3.2.4a outlines standards for specific areas. The project is within Wellfield Zone 4, so prior to building permit, an affidavit of notification to the Palm Beach County Department of Environmental Resources Management will be required. As for compliance with the land development regulation, the plat enforces the lots associated with the approved site plan that's compliant with the city's LDR, and any future modifications would be subject to site plan review. Here are your board actions, and that concludes staff's presentation. Will be available for questions.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public who'd like to speak about this? Seeing none, does the applicant or staff have any rebuttal or cross-examination?
Nothing further from me.
None from staff.
Okay. Mr. Maitland,
No questions.
Katz, Ms. Thomas,
No questions.
Mr. Brown,
No questions.
Mr. Strong,
No questions.
Ms.
or
Malika.
comments?
Deja vu.
Apparently, we have no questions or comments. We,
Make a motion to recommend approval of City Commission for the certification of final plat, Fifth Avenue Townhomes associated with the creation of 5.
There's 7 members.
7, okay. I'm not used to everybody being here. Okay, everything passed 7-0 tonight, every time. Thank you. Okay, never mind. All right, Ms. Rosenberg, you have something else for us?
I'd like to enter into the record city case file number 2025-064, which is a privately initiated rezoning from professional office district to general commercial for the property located at 1660 South Congress Avenue.
Okay.
Yep. Perfect.
Okay, at this point, do we have any expertise on this project? No?
Same, yes. I have talked to Mr. Schiller, and I drive by the site pretty much every day, or not every day, but a lot.
Yeah, I spoke to Mr. Schiller, and I'm familiar with the site, and I specifically visited.
I spoke with him briefly, and I'm familiar with the site.
Spoke with Mr. Schiller briefly.
Just received an email.
Received an email and did a site visit as well. to the
All right,
court.
thank you.
Great.
Mr. Schiller.
Thank you so much, Mitch. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I'm very hyper today. I'm here today, Neil Schiller, with Government Law Group, 137 Northwest 1st Avenue, right across from City Hall, representing Heidi Dew, which is the property owner at 1600 South Congress Avenue. And we're asking for a rezoning today from professional office development, POD, to general commercial GC. In case you don't realize where the site is, we're on the corner, the northwest corner of Linton and Congress. Well, let me go back for a second because this was a good one. So I also want to point out what's around us, right? So we have some residential around us, multifamily residential. We've got strip commercial up and down. This is actually a big strip center here on the northeast corner. On the southeast corner, we have medical office and pharmacy. And on the southwest corner, we have the Shell gas station. So this is a hard corner. This is a hard commercial corner. And so we want to change the zoning to be more in line with the uses on the corner. Again, location is 1660 South Congress Avenue, highlighted in blue. This is a small site. It is 0.77 acres, but yet we're only 170 feet wide by 200 feet long. So this is a unique site, and we have that corner cut out. So anything my client ends up wanting to do here is going to have to be parked appropriately, have the necessary setbacks and buffering. So the uses on the site really can't amount to that much, and I'm going to get into that. I do want to point out that the comprehensive plan does have this property as general commercial in the comprehensive plan. And the zoning map has it as POD, professional office. Now, just to the south of us is general commercial. That Shell station is general commercial. And so there would not be any sort of spot zoning going on here because the southern property is GC. So when you look to the code and we talk about change of zoning districts, you automatically go to section 2.4.5B6, okay? And that section is really going to test my eyesight. You're going to look, but you're going to look first to the findings. And it says, in addition to the provision of Chapter 3, which are required findings, you must make a finding that the rezoning fulfills at least one of the reasons listed under subsection 3 in furtherance of public health, safety, and welfare. So then we go to subsection B. And that says a statement of the reasons for which the changes being sought must accompany the application. Valid reasons for approving the change in zoning district are the zoning had previously been changed or was originally established in error. We are not asserting that one. We are asserting 2 and 3. Second is there has been a change in circumstance which makes the current zoning inappropriate. And 3, the requested zoning is of a similar intensity as allowed under the land use map, and that is more appropriate for the property based on the circumstances particular to the site and or neighborhood. So let's go with the second reason first. There has been a change in circumstance which makes the current zoning inappropriate. The demand for office space in the city in South Florida has significantly diminished since 2019 due to social distancing, remote work, COVID, and work at home. We all know employers have saved thousands or hundreds of thousands, or if not millions of dollars from transitioning their workforce to work from home. Yes, they are bringing them back in some industries and in some instances, but the work at home phenomenon remains very, very strong, particularly in South Florida. The McKinsey Global Institute estimates that there'll be 13% less office demand by 2030. The significant increase in remote work since 2019 has continued into 2025. The reason that this site is vacant is because Wells Fargo closed this branch. And why did they do that? Financial institutions are closing branches around the country, not just to sell off the real estate and actually make some money, but they're transitioning their customers away from the brick and mortar stores and onto their apps on their phones and online banking. When I just was in a Wells Fargo yesterday to deposit a check and get some cash back, and I was directed to an ATM. When I asked about potentially, investing in a certificate of a deposit or something like that for my son, I was told to go online. So the financial institutions are no longer servicing customers in person. And so POD zoning is very limited to address these market conditions. No one's building professional office here. The demand for office, as I'll show you in a minute, is for Class A and Class B office space. This location is Class C or Class D office space because of the location, because of what you can actually build there. I want to show you, this is a report from the United States Census Bureau, and it highlights different professions and where they are working from home. And you can see, I've highlighted in the stars, all of those different professions are uses allowed in uses allowed in POD. And if you take that to the right, those uses, you can see the uses on the right and how the work from home has affected them. Professional, scientific, and technical services had the largest difference from 2015 to 2022 in terms of where their workers are working. Go down the list to information, finance and insurance, educational services, real estate, rental and leasing, healthcare, and social assistance. So these uses, these office uses in your POD are transitioning away from the actual office. And the census has proven that. When you look at the change of zoning district designation for CBRE Congressional Avenue strategies, they actually highlight the issue. And the issue is the Palm Beach submarket is not immune to post-pandemic office market trends, negatively impacted by hybrid work. According to CAS Systems, the average office occupancy as of December 2022 across the top 10 U.S. cities remains under 50% of pre-pandemic occupancy. I will give you the name of my optometrist after, if anybody wants it. I'm impressed with myself. Delray Beach is currently experiencing a 7% vacancy rate that will only increase over the next few years. That said, the Palm Beach submarket, there is a current demand for new, small-scale Class A office space and highly amenitized rental environments, which is not the kind of environment currently found along Congress Avenue. Okay, your consultant said it best. So let's go to the third reason why the change of zoning district, why we're asking for it. The requested zoning is of similar intensity as allowed under the land use map. As I told you, the land use map has this property as general commercial. We are seeking to change the zoning to general commercial. The Citus property, as I told you, is a hard corner, better suited for flexible general commercial uses. The site is prohibitively small, making parking intensive uses unrealistic. So we have the code automatically limiting what's going to be there. The more flexibility we have for my client and or a future owner is helpful because of the small site and because of the fact that heavy parking uses can't be accommodated on this site because it's so small. And GC, general commercial, is a reasonable zoning district at this location. It's located to the south on the east side of Congress. You've got a very intense strip commercial center and medical office and pharmacy, which is a high traffic generator. When we look at performance standards, as I told you in the previous case, there are required standards, consistency with the land use map. A rezoning to general commercial, GC, will be consistent with the existing land use map designation of GC, general commercial. Concurrency, the rezoning is consistent with concurrency requirements, water, sewer, drainage, including our SCAD report. Consistency, a finding of overall consistency shall be made even though the action may be in conflict with some individual performance standards contained in Article 3.2. Well, we are consistent with all of the performance standards. We are not inconsistent with any of them, and the rezoning is compliant with your land development regulations. So then we get to this additional standards for rezoning actions, that the most restrictive residential zoning district that is applicable given to the existing development patterns and typical lot sizes shall be applied. We're not asking, we're not asking for residential zoning, we're asking for commercial zoning, so this standard doesn't apply, is not applicable. Though I will say, and your staff will tell you, general commercial does allow residential. It is not our intent to develop residential. However, a future property owner may. But again, the site is very small, and residential comes with its own share of parking intensive uses. Rezoning of the land located west of I-95 to accommodate auto dealerships is not applicable because we're proposing a rezoning not to include auto dealerships or to AC. C, zoning changes that would result in strip commercial development shall be avoided. The rezoning of the property really can't result in strip commercial development because of the size of the lot and because of the parking that would be required for such a heavy retail use. D, rezoning of the land shall result in allowing land uses deemed compatible with adjacent and nearby land uses, both existing and proposed. As I showed you, to the south of us is GC, a working gas station, which I would submit to you is probably the most intense use on that corner. Followed by the strip center on the northeast corner is a very intense use, followed by the medical office building. And so we believe that the rezoning is compatible with all of the land uses, and even to the land uses to the north and to the west, the multifamily residential. Setbacks, lot coverage, landscape buffers, parking requirements all exist to properly mitigate adverse impacts from a site plan. We don't have a site plan yet. We haven't proposed a site plan yet. That will be coming up, and you will likely see that as this board. E, remaining infill lots within the coastal high hazard area, the coastal planning area shall be developed, and we're not in that coastal high hazard area, so that standard is not applicable. We talk about consistency with the comp plan, and I'm not going to read these out to you, even though I could, because I could see that far. But there are a lot of different policies in the comprehensive plan that we are consistent with. Let's talk about our consistency with the Congress Avenue corridor study, which is very important. The city has invested a lot of time, energy, and money into that. And so when you look at the recommendations for this area of the Congress Avenue corridor, it says support existing home improvement, light industrial clusters, and encourage commercial property improvement or redevelopment. Well, this is a major redevelopment. If you've passed by the site, it's a blighted site. It really needs to be redeveloped. In sub-area 4, it says support more residential. And then it goes on to say this area, although zoned MROC, is where new full residential development currently gravitates because it is outside of a half-mile walking distance of the Tri-Rail station. It makes sense for this area to focus less on transit-oriented development and more on a balanced horizontal mix of uses, including 100% residential development. Well, I've already explained to you that residential development really isn't a candidate for this site. It's a hard corner commercial site. What we originally proposed on this site was a drive-through restaurant. I think my client's rethinking that, but again, hasn't come in with a site plan or hasn't proposed that formally to you. So in conclusion, we've established the findings to allow for rezoning of this property. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan. It's consistent with your LDRs. It's consistent with the Congress Avenue corridor study. The rezoning will allow for this property to finally be redeveloped and improved because it is a blight on the community. Just putting up the signs, there were mounds and mounds of trash in the median, in the swale, and yes, I called the property owner to clean it up, but it continues to accumulate. People traverse that site on a daily basis, walking through that parking lot. Having something clean and lit will be a significant improvement to the community, and that can only start with the rezoning of this property. So again, the site will be brought into today's standards, and today's standards provide all the protection that community to the north and to the west would want when a site plan is finally developed. So we ask to vote for your vote today, and ask to recommend this to City Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schiller. Ms. Rosenberg.
All right, good evening again. So I'll try not to be too repetitive, but just going over the property information again. It's approximately 0.79 acres located at 1660 South Congress Avenue, which is the northwest corner of West Linton Boulevard and South Congress Avenue. The property is currently developed with a drive-through bank and has a land use designation of general commercial and is currently zoned professional office district. In 1984, the drive-through bank was constructed under the Special Activities District zoning. It was rezoned to multifamily residential and then rezoned again to professional office district in 1990 through a citywide rezoning. So the request tonight is to rezone the property from professional office district to general commercial. The site is adjacent to multifamily residential to the north and west, across from commercial to the east, and also across from a gas station and more multifamily residential to the south. Here we have the existing and proposed zoning to general commercial. So the existing professional office district zoning is intended for small scale and very specific uses on small parcels specific to office type uses, while the proposed general commercial zoning that's intended for small parcels as well, but best suited for retail, office uses, and more variety of general commercial uses. With additional regulations in particular locations, such as the Four Corners district, where there's an encouragement of more mixed-use development. General commercial zoning is primarily applied along arterial and collector streets, while the professional office district, does not have a specific location criteria. Going into the staff analysis, looking at the land use map, both the existing and current, both the current and requested zoning are preferred implementing zoning districts of the general commercial land use category, and the existing drive-through bank is a use that's permitted as a principal use in both zoning districts as well. The project or the proposal meets the concurrency of the comprehensive plan when it comes to school capacity, water and sewer, solid waste, drainage, parks and recreation. And regarding traffic, staff does analyze the most intense traffic uses in each zoning district. So based on the proposed general commercial, it does have the potential to generate 510 daily trips. I'm going to go into that a little bit more on the next slide. So a little difficult to read, but basically in summary, under the existing zoning district, one of the most intense traffic uses would be a drive-through bank, which generates a little under 200 daily trips. While under the proposed general commercial zoning district, one of the most intensive traffic uses that would be permitted would be a drive-through restaurant, for example, which has the potential to generate, I believe, a little over 600 trips. So then that would result in a potential net increase of 510 trips. And just to add as well, with any redevelopment of the site or any new use coming in that would require a site plan modification, a traffic study would likely be required concurrently with that site plan. Going into the consistency with the Always Delray Comprehensive Plan, the area along Congress Avenue, south of West Atlantic Avenue, is intended for a mix of commercial, office, and high-intensity residential uses. The existing zoning, like I mentioned, accommodates mostly office-based uses, while the proposed general commercial zoning permits a broader range of commercial uses. Therefore, the rezoning of the property to general commercial would maintain consistency with the land use designation, while expanding the range of uses that could be permitted and further activating that intersection. Also touching on the Delray Beach Congress Avenue strategies plan, which was completed in 2023. The study found that there's many office and retail vacancies, limited space for growing industrial businesses, and increased pressure to build standalone residential with a lot of the increase in property prices. The property is within sub-area 4 of the plan, which encourages commercial property improvement and redevelopment. And the plan also talks about considering alternative commercial and light industrial uses for underutilized office space, which would be difficult under the existing zoning since POD is limited to very specific office uses. Regarding compliance with the land development regulations, no site plan modification has been submitted at this time, but any modifications or new redevelopment would be subject to staff review and possibly board review as well, depending on the scope of work. Going into the rezoning analysis, LDR section 2.4.5 D2 lists the valid reasons for approving a change of zoning. So, like Mr. Schiller mentioned, the application is being processed under the second and third criteria. The applicant cites numerous references that highlight the decline of physical locations of financial institutions and in the real estate market, which may render the existing professional office district zoning inappropriate. LDR section 3.2.2 outlines the standards for rezoning. So criterion A, B, and E are not applicable. Criterion C restricts any change of zoning that would result in strip commercial development. Technically, under the existing zoning and proposed zoning, certain uses are allowed that may result in strip commercial. However, due to the size and the shape of the lot, it's very unlikely that a strip commercial configuration would be able to be developed on the property. And then regarding criterion D, rezoning the land shall be compatible with the surrounding zoning districts and surrounding neighborhoods. So again, we have to the north multifamily residential, which has a medium density residential zoning district. To the south, we have more general commercial zoning and more medium density multifamily zoning. To the east, we have mixed residential office and commercial. And to the west, we have multifamily residential. So generally, general commercial is usually generally compatible. Of course, each use shall be analyzed based on the compatibility of the surrounding area, and something the board may consider is if all of the uses that were permitted under the general commercial, if any would be pose negative impacts, or if there is enough requirements or restrictions in the code that would mitigate any potential negative impacts. Here are your considerations. So again, the board may consider whether there's been a change in circumstance on the site or within the neighborhood that renders the existing zoning inappropriate, and also whether the requested zoning is of similar intensity as allowed under the general commercial land use, and is more appropriate based upon the circumstances particular to the neighborhood. So if recommended for approval tonight, the application would likely go to City Commission in April or May for first and second reading. And I will leave you with the board options, and that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you very much. At this point, does any member of the public like to speak about this?
Good evening.
Good evening.
How y'all doing? I'm Christina Morrison.
Were you here and got sworn in?
No.
You better get
forgot.
sworn in first.
I forgot. Diane, do you mind?
Please raise your right hand. Authority vested in the notary of the state of Florida. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Thank you. Nice to see you. Good evening. My name is Christina Morrison. I live at 1000 Lowry Street in beautiful downtown Delray Beach. I am your local unassigned expert on Congress Avenue tonight. So I sat on the board, as you know, of the Congress Avenue Task Force, have worked on the street for over a decade to try to make it better and to make it fully usable for our wonderful city. This particular site that Neil is bringing forward is a very tired site. It's sitting next to a neighborhood that's very tired also, and that has some code violation issues and things like that. So to hear that this corner is going to be redeveloped is really a breath of fresh air for this area. As you know, approximately 1,400 new homes are being built within a half mile of this site, 1,072 of them in the parks of Delray. There's a new site across the street from this with apartments going in by Trammell Crow and a few other smaller sites around. In addition, this site sits very close to the industrial and light industrial districts of our city, including the mixed zone, mixed industrial commercial. So its transition to general commercial is perfect for this site. There's going to be many uses needed for all these new residents along Congress Avenue, and the more that are going to come, and the more businesses that are also going to come, because we're going to work on rezoning, as you know, part of Congress Avenue back to the mixed zone to create more light industrial and businesses moving back into our city. So please approve this this zoning change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. Seeing no one else, does the applicant or staff have any rebuttal or cross-examination?
The applicant's rebuttal, Mr. Chair, is just to thank staff. They've been really accommodating and wonderful to work with, so thank you, staff.
Thank you. Ms. Rosenberg, anything?
No rebuttal, thank you.
Not going to rebut that, are you? Okay, board discussion. Ms. Malika.
I feel like they showed definite change in circumstances with regard to banking kind of disappearing, and it is a tired little poor bank sitting there. And I think it is similar to the properties around it, GC would be. That's all I got.
Okay, Mr. Strawn.
I think it's a welcome change, so I don't have a problem with it.
Thank you. Mr. Brown.
Well, I do have a question of staff. So, Ms. Rosenberg, put your hat on as a Congress Avenue redevelopment expert. What would your vision be for this site? Don't ask Mr. Schiller, because he said he doesn't know yet. Because this is, the only thing worried about the zoning change, I don't know what's going to go there. And I certainly don't want a fast food restaurant with 600 new trips a day. I mean, Linton is bad enough as it is. So what is your vision for this site? If you're willing to give it to me.
So I can go, let me just show a graphic. It might be a little hard to tell. So on the graphic here, and this is clipped straight out of the Congress Avenue Strategies Plan. So the city, which worked together with this plan, it's not highlighted because of the size of the site. It's not deemed an area that would be most appropriate maybe for high intensity or high density residential like some of the other areas along Congress Avenue, just because of the size and the shape of the site, with a lot of limitations. Staff does understand and recognize that with the decline of certain office space that maybe the existing zoning district might not be most appropriate. So different zoning districts would allow different commercial uses that could inhabit the space, but something that's important to consider is just the different type of commercial zoning districts the city has to offer that would be implemented under the existing land use, and to see what type of uses would or would not be appropriate. Because while general commercial zoning district has numerous uses that could be appropriate, there might be some uses that might not be as compatible. So it truly depends. Some of the uses require additional review, for example, conditional use review. There's other uses that are permitted by right, but maybe would require a site plan. So it is on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, that's not what I asked you. So I'll retract my question, because I asked you for a vision. Now, Mr. Schiller, let's get your vision. What would you give us if we gave you the GC zoning designation? What's your vision for the corner and for Congress Avenue? Because Congress Avenue does have a plan.
If I may interject, so I think we're asking for the board to consider, and thank you, Alexis, for that very middle of the road approach, because we obviously can't we can't necessarily answer to the detail that you've given, but we're just asking the board to consider the bundle of uses within the existing zoning and then the bundle of uses within the proposed zoning. And then pursuant to section 322D, which says that you're supposed to consider if it's compatible and whether there are enough regulations to properly mitigate any potential adverse impacts. So as you're considering this bundle of uses, we would just ask you to consider that. Our zoning regulations require a 6-foot solid masonry wall and 4-foot hedge when there is commercial adjacent to residential. So that would be the biggest thing that is automatically off the bat required. But things changed. We would just ask you to consider the full bundle of things that are allowed in POD versus GC and which one could better help to accommodate the recommendations of the study.
I'm going to help Mr. Schiller. Mr. Schiller, you made a statement about all the housing that's coming up, around this site.
I didn't make that statement. Ms. Morrison made that statement.
Oh, Miss Morrison did. Oh, she's so brilliant.
She is.
I should get, if I could get her up here, I would like to. But do you have any vision for this site? What are you going to give us?
I'd love to answer that question, but I've been authorized to get the property rezoned. I think my client is looking at a variety of different commercial uses. I know that's what he's looking at. He's not looking at residential. He's looking at a variety of different commercial uses, in addition to potentially selling the property and letting somebody else come in development, which is
Here's
I'm
my
being
problem.
frank.
We're giving your client something that they want, but I don't know what we're going to get, and it's not specific enough in the Congress.
Well, let me tell.
Study.
Let me answer that question. I'll tell you what you're
now
going to get.
You got to work on me a little bit here.
I will. But let me tell you what you're going to get by rezoning this property. You're going to take a blighted piece of property and you're going to be able to redevelop it. This is a very prominent corner in the city, right? Linton and Congress are very big, well-traveled streets, and this is not representative of the city of Delray Beach. It's not. By allowing GC and allowing more flexibility in the potential uses of that property, you allow for the redevelopment of probably the best project that can go there. And I'm not the one to make that decision. This board isn't the one to make that decision. Essentially, the market will essentially bring forward what they think is going to be best, and maybe this board will, and hopefully this board will have the opportunity to hear that, and as well as the city commission. I think a site plan is going to be required on this site unless whoever develops it wants to use that existing bank building, and I can tell you, I don't think that bank building can be used. So it's going to have to be demolished. A site plan is going to have to be proposed and approved for this site, 100%.
What was that, the original First Union Bank on that corner?
I think it was a First Union, then it changed to
I remember that.
Wachovia, and then Wells Fargo, and it was a big transition. But the POD district hasn't allowed this property to be redeveloped, and it shows. Thank you.
I'm gonna let I might say something else, but I'll let my other.
Oh, okay. Thomas.
You reserve your time.
I'm over my time.
Exactly.
Reserve my time.
I never speak very often.
That
First
is
time since
true.
I've been on the board. More than 5 words.
That is true. So one of the great things about being on the board is that you have to look at each property individually. And also sometimes that's frustrating because you're not allowed to take into account what people say or the public says because it has to go case by case basis and it has to be within the parameters and all these rules. And so that sometimes gets frustrating because if it fits all the rules and then people don't like it, you kind of feel like you wish you could have more flexibility, if you will. But I keep going back to the fact that, yes, this is hard to give sort of an open-ended, I would say like a blank check if you were like writing it for like GC in that area, but that's also why our plans have rules that say that even if we give this broad example, that fits this criteria, because the Shell's right south of that, and that makes it a busy intersection anyway. And then the strip mall, or the strip commercials, whatever it's called, and that corner needs something, in my opinion. And so we're not handing them a blank check, because we also have regulations for the next meeting if they bring something in. And I understand, as you mentioned, that you don't necessarily want, something like a fast food restaurant, but then I'm always at the corner of Linton and Federal, and I see Chick-fil-A move out hundreds and hundreds of cars and expedite them so quickly, not to use, specifics, but I don't like that corner, and I think that we need to kind of trust that the person that owns it are gonna bring some goodness to that corner, and that we have rules that are in place to prevent, just anything in a quote-unquote blank check, if you will, as a example, if you will. So I don't have a problem with it. I have a problem with how it currently sits. So any improvement to me is something that's better than what it is for our beautiful town. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Mr. Katz?
Sure. First of all, I probably have talked to more residents in Lakaya and Axis Del Rey, which are one's west, Lakaya is west of it, and Axis is south, because I've knocked on pretty much every door in both of those communities multiple times when I ran for office. And I will tell you, there's residents there. They don't want to see that. They want to see improvements. And well, I agree with you. A restaurant could cause a lot of trips. I will tell you, those residents there probably would want some type of fast food, because yes, there's a lot east on Linton, but a lot of those residents in those neighborhoods, especially Lakaya behind, they don't drive. They don't have cars. Most of them right now are in, they're getting food or, fast food type things across the street in that plaza. If you ever, and I go to the tool shop there and the, across the street there, that plaza is packed. I mean, Presidente there, and what else is going on there. So I don't know what is going to be there. It's obviously going to be whatever, some developer comes in that says, once it's rezoned, that they can do there. But like I said, I think anything there is going to be an improvement. Right now, it is just a blight, and it is, it's a very important corner. I mean, like I said, anywhere you go in Delray, if you live west of 95, you're passing that site, and those of us that do live west of 95 have to see what's there now. So and hopefully, they'll do something good there, and that's what that's why I think our colleague said it best here. We have the rules in place to hopefully help make that happen, and we have a staff that helps guide. Something comes really bad, I think staff does a good job too of saying, hey, that's probably not going to fly, and a lot of times, a lot of projects never get past the front door, as they say, because of that. That's all I have.
I think it's a reasonable request. Clearly, the landlord is probably taking a financial hit with the property sitting vacant for 2 years, not to mention that the city certainly could be making more revenue if there was an active business in there. The rules are in place that this board would likely not approve something that didn't make sense or was outside of the rules. So I'm totally good with it.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Brown, you have some more comments?
I have one question for the staff. Under GC, is fast food restaurants a permitted use or a conditional use?
So,
Principal.
restaurants, including drive-through, are permitted by right, the use itself.
There's no way to prevent a fast food restaurant in that corner under
So,
GC.
if it is rezoned to general commercial, the use would be permitted. What would come under review would be the site plan. So that would have specific requirements. So if, for example, if it was drive-through, there's specific requirements on stacking. In addition to parking, there would be a traffic study likely required. But depending on the scope of work, it may...
Okay, I'm going to say one other thing. Okay, you can stop. When I worked for the city, ran the CRA in the 1990s, we got rid of fast food on Atlantic Avenue. Did it make any difference that somebody had to park and walk under one of the most beautiful streets, Atlantic Avenue, to go eat? It was an experience to go eat. All we're doing with encouraging GC on the corner of Linton and Congress is to encourage more suburban sprawl and confusion. It's not going to be an urban infill site like we did in the 90s for Atlantic Avenue. And at one time, the CRA, when Mr. Costello was at the CRA, they were considering expanding the CRA, and it's too bad they didn't, but the politics were probably not there. And then it would have been a little more helpful, and they would have probably had a little bit more of a hand in answering the question that I asked Mr. Schiller, what is your vision? Because they would have created a vision. That's what CRAs do. But not city planning departments necessarily. They do, but in a very controlled way. Mr. Schiller, I'm sorry I kept going on this.
I don't know. Do you have a question for me? I'm happy to.
No, I don't
I'm
have
happy
a
to
question.
respond.
If you have anything, please.
Ju-
If Mr. Brown's finished.
I'm finished. I'm not going to vote for that.
Yeah, do you have any further comments?
And Mr. Brown and I have had so many great conversations over the years. I completely respect you and your opinion. I would just say that this site is unfortunately not an urban area. There's not going to be a lot of walkability here. This is on the intersection of two very big roadways, one of which is just, 500 feet from an I-95 exit. So, and I understand your point about suburban sprawl. And actually, I disagree. I don't think this is necessarily more sprawl. I think we're just redeveloping a property that, will have more trips to it.
But it is sprawl because I'm afraid it's going to be more traffic. And I think what we need to do is have the city relook at the Congress Avenue master plan and update it. That's my recommendation.
Well, we did update the Congress Avenue plan in 2023 through CBRE, the National Real Estate Company, which cast.
You can't answer my question is, what is your vision? I don't think you have a vision for Congress Avenue yet.
I asked the question. I think you said earlier in the concept plan it shows this as general commercial. There was something mentioned of that.
So the overall land use designation is general commercial, which has implementing zoning districts.
Right.
It's the land use.
Right.
Correct. So here we have implementing zoning
kind of
districts.
fitting into that.
Yeah, our general commercial, automotive commercial, planned commercial, the existing zoning district of professional office district, and POC, which is another office-based zoning district.
So the plan, the CBRE plan, casts a vision for the entire corridor. There's certain areas that they identified as being pockets of certain industries that we should try to support and further. So then it's obviously at the pleasure of the board to determine whether GC or POD is a better way to accomplish the overall vision for the corridor as outlined in the plan.
All right. Yeah, I have some things to say as well. I looked at this. My initial reaction to a request for general commercial on this property was, that seems excessive. Maybe it should be neighborhood commercial. But I looked at the uses available in both of those, and there's some things in general commercial that I wouldn't be happy with, but overall neighborhood commercial is way too restrictive, I think, for a person to be able to utilize that property. There's a list of this many retail uses in general, and there's a list of this many retail uses in neighborhood.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't, unfortunately, have the flexibility that anyone would need, I don't think, to operate that.
And
There are a
quickly,
couple-
just to add to that, neighborhood commercial zoning district also has a minimum 1 acre
Does it?
site area. Yeah, so unfortunately,
Okay,
the
so
site
it's-
wouldn't meet
it
that.
doesn't- It's not good. There are some things that I think are problematic. And I think the big thing that was brought up here is the traffic. Lytton's turned into Atlantic as far as traffic goes these days. And
No, it's probably worse. Definitely east of 95. It absolutely is
but
worse.
that corner, at the corners of Congress,
Yeah.
Congress and Lytton and Atlantic and Congress are both horrible. Anyway, when I go down Lytton, I just think it's just like 95. Just like Atlantic always is. And a 510 traffic trips a day would be a problem. Obviously, it's been stated here more than once in the last few minutes that that's subject to a site plan approval. The other two things that I wouldn't like to see there are a tattoo establishment and a CBD establishment. And both of those are principal uses of general commercial. So I would like to know that there was some way to stop those from going, one of those from going in, but I don't think there is there?
A drive-through tattoo shop.
That sells CBD.
No, you can't do that because
Right,
it doesn't
so-
say that.
yeah.
It's a restaurant drive-through.
If it is listed as a permitted use, use-wise, it would be allowed. It would only be the site plan review application. Some uses have specific review criteria. So I will say, I believe CBD establishments have additional specific criteria.
Yeah, they do, but nothing that would stop you from putting it in this property that I could see.
Okay, because yeah, we didn't get a chance to look at. I don't remember the criteria off the top of my head, but some criteria sometimes can restrict a use from going
Yeah,
to certain areas.
oh, no, I understand that, and I looked at those, and Mr. Schiller.
I'd just like to remind the board that, remember, these uses have to be able to afford the ability to develop the property, to pay the rent, et cetera, et cetera. These uses, as you've noted.
Good point.
Not very positive, are located in not very good areas of the city. So I would just say that, yes, it would be allowed conceivably, but realistically unlikely to happen.
And it would require a site plan approval.
Require site plan approval.
For anything that's built there. Okay, but so the bottom line, in my opinion, is that there's not a better choice going on. This is good. And if there are no more comments from the board,
One additional.
Please.
How many apartments, Ms. Morrison, you say is already approved on Congress? Just about.
oh, geez.
Right, 1,400 apartments approved. Well, I will say, as a resident, I didn't agree with those decisions, but the cat's out of the bag. So you have 1,400 apartments being built. Those people are going to move in addition to all those other apartments there, and they're going to need restaurants, services, things that general commercial is going to provide, and somebody's going to find a use to take dollars out of their wallets. So.
I agree with that. I think that's well said.
Just one more thing, we were able to confirm for a CBD establishment, it has to be 300 feet from residential, so that
Oh, it does.
specific
Okay.
use wouldn't be able to
Super.
go there.
You want
That's
a
good.
motion?
Sure.
I would love a motion.
Move a recommendation of approval to the City Commission of Ordinance number 13-25, a privately initiated rezoning from professional office district to general commercial for the property located at 1660 South Congress Avenue, finding that the request and approval thereof is consistent with the comprehensive plan and meets the applicable criteria set forth in the land development regulations.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Thomas, second by Mr. Katz. Ms. Miller, if you'd read the roll.
Jeffrey
Call the roll.
Musselman?
Yes.
Chris Brown?
No.
Deidre Strong?
Yes.
Mitch Katz?
Yes.
Allison Thomas?
Yes.
Judy Malika?
Yes.
Gregory Snyder?
Yes. So if I heard that correctly, it's another 7-0.
No, 6-1.
6-1? Oh, yeah, I couldn't hear him vote.
Yeah,
Thank you, guys.
That's the
So
first
Why I
time we've
phrased
heard
it
you on the
that way.
microphone.
6-1, I couldn't hear his vote.
We can never.
Okay,
I know.
We
so,
need to do something about Congress. We're not doing anything.
thank you. Thank you. Okay. Let's go stand. Whatever we're going to. And Mr. Gedank. Yeah, go, please.
Good
Mr.
evening, board
Gedank.
members. Julian Gedanik, Senior Planner. At this time, I'd like to enter into the record file number 2024-170. I will turn it over to the applicant's agent, Jeff Costello.
Okay, before we get going, ex parte, Mr. Midland.
No.
Mr. Gadd.
I spoke to Mr. Costello.
So,
I'm very familiar with the location, and I spoke with you briefly.
Mr. Brown.
Mr. Costello called me.
Yeah, I had a conversation with Mr. Costello and I visited the site.
Yeah, I know the site and just got an email from Mr. Costello.
Okay, and I spoke to Mr. Costello and I also visited the site. So, Mr. Costello, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Chair, Board, Jeff Costello, JC Planning Solutions, 91 Delray Lakes Drive, Delray Beach. I'm here with the owner, Graham. Just wanted to introduce quickly and then our design team, if there's any questions, and then I'll present. Sure.
I didn't have any ex parte communications within you, so I wanted to come and introduce myself formally. I was first introduced to Delray Beach in about 2017 with my former company and was drawn to the architectural heritage of Delray Beach, and I hope that you see some of that in the design. One of the things that I think is really attractive to me as a developer and also to any of the residents and people here is the way that the boards like this deliberate and make good decisions. And as you've heard from the other applicants, the city staff has been great to work with, and the adherence to the rules and flexibility with working with us and actually providing really solid input that helps bring a great project forward. So I hope that you continue to do what you do and vote obviously in favor of allowing our project to proceed so we can help build the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. And so as we go forward, this property is located at the southwest corner of Southwest First Street and Southeast First Street and Southwest First Avenue. It's about 3-5 acres, and it's in the central core. And this is with Central Business District, Zoning District, Central Core Sub-District. We have the unique challenge of dealing with two primary streets on First Street and Fifth Avenue. And again, staff has worked with us in moving this forward. The adjacent zonings were surrounded by CBD. And these are just some photos of the property. It's A&H Automotive. You all are probably very familiar. Maybe you took your car there in the past. And then the surrounding developments that we see, to the east and the west, the Menon and the mixed-use building to the west across the alley. And then some residential and offices to the north and south. This perspective just was before you previously on the townhouse development to the south, and within this block, it's pretty much all getting redeveloped and built out. Just gives you the perspective of what's really within this block. The proposal, this is a level 3 site plan, and so it's a 4-story, 8-unit townhouse type condominium building. So these are not fee simple. You will not see a plat. So lucky you. This is an Anglo-Caribbean architectural style, which is one of the preferred architectural styles in the CBD. This does have ground level parking, 18 spaces, a central parking area with access, there we go, off the alley. So all the service and activity is off the alley. We have the streetscape that we're implementing per the LDRs, your pedestrian clear zones, curb zone, 2 on-street parking spaces, and a bus shelter on First Street. To continue on, so the second level is the amenity deck above the parking area, and these units do expand over that area as well. Oops. Uh-oh. I went too far. Thanks. Okay, and so, and then on the 4th level, each unit includes an open space area, garden deck and sitting room. Again, I mentioned the streetscape improvements, and this does require right-of-way dedications. 2 feet on the alley, 2.5 feet along First Street, corner clips at the intersections, 20 by 20 at 5th and First, and then at the alley a 10 by 10. This is just the overall side. This gives you the perspective without the seeing the deck, the amenities on the second level, and this is pretty much how it's all laid out. These two areas here, these cutouts are really areas. They're about 5 feet by 25 feet, and they're really where the rollout carts will be staged 2 days a week for trash pickup. And then the mailbox for the community mailbox is also off the alley. So all those activities are to the rear. Positive findings can be made with regard to LDR section 3.1.1. Land use map consistency, again, the CBD is preferred. Zoning for the commercial core land use. Multifamily dwellings are permitted. This is less than 30 units to the acre. 22.8 could provide 10 units. 8 units is really what fits well. You start getting too crammed in, and it was a difficulty to meet some other requirements in order to go to max it out. Again, so it's at 22.8 units, and then the floor area ratio, 3 is permitted, 2 is provided. Concurrency, the staff report confirms that the project meets adopted level of service standards, and then there's consistency. Consistency with the comprehensive plan, primarily the neighborhood corridors, neighborhood district and corridors element, including the downtown master plan. And also with regard to the standards for site plan actions, pretty much the development proposal meets the applicable standards. The redevelopment proposal adheres to the CBD form-based regulations, the CBD purpose and intent, and this provides stimulation within the downtown area, providing enhanced economic vitality and economic growth to the CBD, while promoting a balanced mix of uses to help the area evolve into a traditional and self-sufficient downtown. That's the goal, right? And then it also fosters a compact pedestrian-oriented growth that will support downtown businesses. Compliance with the LDRs, the staff report is detailed. I'm not going to go through all that. Julia did a great staff report, very detailed, and the overall development standards have been complied with. This is not requesting any waivers to any setback requirements and the like, so it may be refreshing for some of you. But there are a couple items we just want to address, as outlined in the staff report, loading and deliveries, which we all know in a compact urban setting, there's some challenges, but it seems to work out. And so in this particular case here, if you go by 4610, the loading regulation, the guidelines, it really don't anticipate a small scale residential development. When I say small scale, we're talking 8 units. And so what we have here is the sufficient distance. So whenever we do it, we do not provide a loading berth. To do that on this type of site really is just eating up a lot of valuable land and the opportunity to make this just a quality development. And so with that, there is sufficient distance within the alley to accommodate delivery vehicles. Typically, they're 8 feet wide, and to maintain minimal traffic flow within the alley. Just want to note too, move-ins and delivery of larger items, this is a very short-term occurrence. So if somebody's moving in, you're talking 8 units, it's very short-term. It's not a daily restaurant that's getting daily deliveries by the Cisco trucks and all that, or even a retail establishment with larger box trucks on a daily basis. Within the parking lot, drive out, grade to bottom of the amenity deck is 11 feet. So there's smaller delivery vehicles will be able to access that area and to accommodate on site. And then also, just wanted to note too, the move-in and move-outs are coordinated through the condo docks, which are going to be developed, and again, there will be coordination. I did want to note too is that within the alley, here we go. Oh man, why did when I hit that button to highlight, it kept going forward. Sorry.
You're going to go with the back?
Yeah, I wanted to highlight. Okay, so we'll just go by the dimensions. So those cutout areas I mentioned correspond really with the driveways of the adjacent development. So in those areas, you have a larger paved area. So the Menon office building is primarily right across from that cutout area. So in addition to the alley going to be 20 feet wide, there is an extra 5 feet area that in case the vehicle did need to pull off to the side. Again, even on 20 feet, the city actually allows on primary street or on streets 20 feet in width for two-way traffic flow. In this case here, it is an alley. That's usually where your service and deliveries occur, and there'll be a opportunity for vehicles to pass by. And so, like I said, down on the south end, so where those driveways are to the mixed-use development to the west, as well as Menon office building, there'll be that increased width to accommodate delivery of vehicles for those short-term occurrences. Also, interior to the parking lot, there was we're in the downtown core. We want to maintain as much parking as possible, noting that while we could meet the requirement by the construction of the 2 spaces on First Street, those are open to the public. And so we went ahead and with the design to ensure that there were a couple on-site guest spaces provided. There will also be, the residents will have designated spaces as well in front of their units. So if there is, let's say somebody needs a refrigerator, they bring it on in, they can move their vehicle. It's a short-term time frame. For instance, those ramps, that's what a lot of the movers use. That just happened to be my house where they were moving furniture out. And so if there's a curb, you just move it right up, no issue. And so we did increase the walkways to 5 feet, allows for a 2-foot car overhang. But if those vehicles are not there, you have a wider walkway. 3 feet is the minimum you need by code. And so we feel that we've provided that. And again, these are not daily occurrences, that for these occasional spaces, this design would work well. The overall landscape plan complies with 4616. Again, the streetscape Cathedral Oaks, there was no issues with regard to landscaping provided by the landscape planner. And then the architectural elevations compliance. Overall positive findings can be made with regard to the Anglo-Caribbean architectural style. There are the criteria in 4618E1 through 3. Positive findings can be made with regard to those. Here you see the renderings. It is the Anglo-Caribbean. It's one of the architectural styles that are allowed within the CBD without having to go to City Commission for approval or getting a waiver by you. But as you can see, it has a lot of different architectural features consistent with the Anglo-Caribbean architectural style. It has projection balconies, louvers, a lot of decorative architectural elements. As I go through here, just going through the elevation. And then these particular components here. So in the code, there are the situations that above the 3rd floor, you step back an additional 10 feet. So let's say you have to have 20 foot from the property line and then the building has to step back. But in these current situations where you have elevator shafts and stairwells, that they provide the ability to provide these architectural elements, kind of brings it up a little bit, and it's tastefully done and really really faces First Street. On Fifth Avenue, you could see that setback. It's setback additional on that upper floor. So it is in keeping with the LDRs. You have to make basically acknowledgement and approval of that. It's not a waiver, it's just an approval of that architectural feature with those 2 tower elements. And with that, we appreciate the opportunity to present and look forward to a positive recommendation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Costello. Very good, Danny.
Good evening again, board members. As you've just heard, this is a level 3 site plan application for an 8-unit residential development, approximately 35,000 square feet. That's gross, so that includes the ground floor garage as well. The subject property is shown in the aerial above. Currently, it's a non-conforming automotive repair facility. It's located in the Central Business District Commercial Core. Land use designation is also commercial core. It's approximately a third of an acre, or about 15,000 square feet. Right smack in the middle of the CBD, surrounded by the same zoning district and same sub-district on all four sides. These are the surrounding properties for some context. Mix of commercial, well, they're all commercial, I believe, but small two-story scale, various different architectural styles. And then this is the subject property facing south along First Street and then facing northwest from the Fifth Ave frontage. So looking at the site plan again, it's 8 residential units. We refer to it as a townhouse typology because from the exterior, each has an individual frontage on the street, so it appears as a townhouse, but in terms of the ownership structure, it's actually a condo. They were required to do that because of the way the units are organized. Fee simple wouldn't be a possible outcome, so that's why it's referred to as a townhouse typology condo unit. Bedroom sizes range from 2-bedroom with a loft to 4-bedroom. The majority, 6 units, are 3-bedroom, and then they're largely around the same size, 3,000 square feet, but more specifically ranging from 2,700 to 3,300. Required parking is provided in the ground floor garage, which is accessed from the alley. It is completely lined on all sides, all frontages, by the active uses, which are the units themselves, which is a net positive. You wouldn't perceive or see any vehicular use area from First Street or from Fifth Avenue. This is highlighting the streetscape. I've turned it on its side, so north is the right side of the screen, but this is the Fifth Ave frontage. You can see the individual stoop entrances. We really worked with the applicant to try to ensure that the quality of the public realm and the streetscape design was as good as it possibly could be, to strike that balance between wide sidewalks while also maintaining some landscaping as well. Landscaping is great, but if you have too much of it at the expense of sidewalks, then walking down that corridor can feel a bit constricted. Conversely, if you don't have enough landscaping, it can feel very stark and not that welcoming for pedestrians. So that is an outcome that we achieved, in my opinion. We do have the required street trees as well, which creates a nice shaded corridor. And there's a lot of existing above ground traffic infrastructure in that corner, which the applicant obviously can't move. So we ensure that there is the 6-foot clear zone that's required to be maintained navigating around that. So everything was placed to ensure that there's at least a 6-foot path around the entire block for pedestrians to walk. This is looking at the First Street frontage. Again, very similar. The blue squares or rectangles are indicating the stoop frontages. It's a very connected use to the streetscape, sort of an eyes on the street concept, which is something that's desirable in urban context. The yellow rectangle is indicating a new bus shelter that will be installed by the applicant. It's currently a functioning bus stop, but there is no shelter. And then again, multiple shade trees being planted to create that street tree canopy. A couple other facets of the site plan. 3 of the units have their residential ground floor access from this sort of private walkway that's along the south of the property. So it's not necessarily a street frontage, but it's still designed with pedestrian connectivity in mind. And then the yellow rectangles on the alley are these alcoves that have been cut out. The primary purpose of that is to serve as trash staging off of the alley, so there's a place for them to put their bins. The permanent resting place of the bins is on the inside of the garage, but when they're picked up, we wanted to make sure that there was a specific place for them so that it wouldn't clutter the alley and cause issues. That's also the area that the applicant is referencing when they're speaking on where they intend to have sort of short-term mail and freight deliveries occur. It's those 2 areas. They do not qualify as loading zones, though, just to put that out there, because they don't meet the minimum dimensions required of the code to be a loading zone. And here we are, actually, perfect timing. Just some considerations. There's a lot that's done really well in the site plan, and again, we did work closely with the applicant to make some tweaks to make it as strong as possible, especially with regard to the streetscape, and it's a vast improvement from the existing non-conforming use. But there are a few issues we want to highlight for your consideration. One is the omission of the loading zone. The applicant is totally correct that there's probably sufficient location, whether it's inside the garage or in those two alcoves, for more frequent freight delivery to occur. We're not really concerned about Amazon trucks, U.S. Postal Service. That's not the issue. But while it is something that won't occur frequently, there are going to be moments where larger moving trucks, delivery trucks, are going to need to accommodate this development. And there's not really a place for that to occur except for in the alley. Those alcoves are 25 feet in length. The standard large moving truck is 26 feet in length. You also have the clearance that's needed to sort of pull out the ramp. So it's going to require a large chunk of that alley. Alleys are meant for back of house uses, but it's just something we really wanted to bring to your attention because the vehicle access to those adjacent properties is off of the alley as well. So there could be a very feasible, realistic scenario where during periods of move in and move out or large appliance delivery, the access to the adjacent properties is constricted or completely obstructed, and it would create some sort of coordination between the two. A potential conflict that, should be avoided if possible in the site plan design. Other issue for you to consider. Let me circle back to this. So LDR section 4610 does allow the board to make a determination of adequacy when a loading zone is not provided. So if you feel that the applicants justified the request and that loading will be accommodated successfully, then you can make that determination and move forward with granting approval. If you don't think the loading is adequately accommodated, then they would be not in compliance with LDR 4610, and then you wouldn't be able to move approval. Site plan circulation. This is not tied to a specific LDR regulation, although there is language in the performance standards and the comprehensive plan that talks about circulation, navigability, creating conflict with adjacent areas. This is all interrelated to that. Essentially, what staff has asked the applicant to consider is removing 2 of the surplus parking spaces that they provide in their parking garage and exchanging them essentially with just striped voided space to be used as like a landing zone or a clearance area, so that in those instances of larger object delivery, whether it's an appliance or furniture, there's an actual path to get them into the unit. And while that will primarily inconvenience the residents of this building, if there's a situation where they actually can't get the furniture into the units through the garage, the only alternative is for them to navigate around the public realm and the sidewalk and come in the front doors. And that does have an impact on the compatibility and stability of the surrounding area. So we would encourage you to consider if the trade-off of removing 2 additional spaces they don't actually require at the benefit of better maneuverability and functionality within the garage is something that you would agree with. Last consideration, the LDR's performance standards and the comprehensive plan speak to a requirement for residential development to incorporate a diversity of unit types. There is a variation in bedroom count. They're not all exactly the same, but the typology is still pretty much the same. They're large footprint luxury residential typologies. So the board needs to consider if, because of the fact that this is a small unit development, it's only 8 units, and they technically do have a variety of unit types, if they're meeting the intent of this code section, or if it would be more consistent with the comprehensive plan if they were incorporating 1 bedrooms, more than 1 2-bedroom, et cetera, because the language in the code is really looking for residential developments to provide a wide gamut of residential typologies. Moving on to the architecture, as the applicant stated, it's Anglo-Caribbean in style. It's a permitted style of the CBD. This happens to be a very well-executed version of the style. It meets pretty much all of the requirements of the design guidelines in terms of the ornamentation, the materials that are used, the articulation, staff we're generally pretty critical of architecture when projects come in, and I honestly didn't have that many comments regarding the project. I do feel that the applicant did a very good job, and I appreciate that. Some specific things in the code, not necessarily related to the style, but just composition, that are very important are a defined tripartite composition, or 3 pieces, base, middle, and top. This clearly has that. They differentiate it through color as well as scored stuccoing and recessing the top level to create that top line, and then just proportions that are consistent with and respect the historical context of downtown. It doesn't feel oversized or out of scale with the surrounding area. There is a specific issue's not the right word, but forgive me because I can't think of what else to refer to it as, but there's a consideration you need to make in approving this. There is a increased setback above the third story that the LDRs require, which is an additional 10 feet or a setback total of 20 feet. However, if there is a tower element, that setback can essentially be disregarded if the board thinks that that tower element has been well integrated into the design and is consistent with the architectural style. So in this case, both on the north facade, which is First Street, and the south facade, they have these 2 tower elements, the circled area in red, and then specifically on the floor plan that the stair tower doesn't comply with that setback. But if you find that it's successfully integrated into a tower, you have the ability to approve it anyway, essentially. Architectural criteria of 4618 applies. Staff finds that it's consistent with the criteria. Briefly on the landscape plan, it's well done. Again, we really tried to make sure that the pedestrian experience along the streets was very positive. There is foundation landscaping intermixed with the shade trees. And this is an example of a cut section of what that streetscape will look like. So it is a 9.5 foot wide sidewalk, whereas 8 feet is the minimum requirement. So we did work with them to provide a wider sidewalk, but there's still plenty of landscaping maintained, so it should be a nice experience. Briefly on consistency, land use map, it complies. Concurrency, no issues. It's elaborated on in the staff report. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan, except for the diversity of unit types were specifically discussed, and it complies with the LDRs. No waivers are requested, except, again, where mentioned with the loading zone and the setback encroachment. These are your board motions, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, Mr. Costello, you have any rebuttal or cross-examination?
Just again, thanks to staff and working with us through the process. Just to restate, we do believe we meet the intent of the standard for site plan action regarding the units, and as I stated previously, I think in this particular situation, given the number of units that the with regard to the loading area that we've accommodated, it would be addressed without impacting adjacent properties.
Thanks. Mr. Yadani, you have anything?
No additional comment. Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Meeslin.
Really only one question, being that it's an automotive business, do you have any concerns on the environmental impact of what they do there and checking that out prior to building?
So there's no concern necessarily at this stage, but they will, if they're mandated by either state EPA law or the building department when they submit building permit to do like soil testing or some kind of environmental study, that will be applicable at that time, but nothing has come up at this stage.
Thank you.
Yeah, please.
If I would, the client did have a phase 1 and it came clean. Phase 2 as well, it's clean. So,
great, thanks, Mr. Katz.
Sure, I've got a couple things. First of all, I think it's when it comes to the mass of the building. I'm not crazy about it. It complies with the LDR, so I've no problem with the size and kind of mass of the building. But when it comes to the amount of units in the building and the amount of people that eventually could live in that building, I think we're putting basically 8 pounds of sand into a 6-pound sack. With 6, say it had been 6 units, you'd have that many less need for parking, for delivery trips. it's a massive site, and then you're taking that big site and cramming as many units into it as possible. And that's where I think, say you had 6 units there, then you'd easily be able to accommodate what staff is asking for this extra parking, because then you'd have your 12 plus even additional guest parking, which this additional guest parking, I lived in a 3-story townhouse, and this is 4 stories, in a very tight street within the city for 10 years. In the beginning, you don't have as many parking issues, but as families start to grow, those parking issues also start to grow. And there's nowhere else around there for them to park. There's nowhere else to accommodate that. Also, Mr. Schiller mentioned earlier about the changing the way we do business and people working from home. So people are home more. Also, because they're home more, they're getting food deliveries during the day. The amount of trips that a unit like this would get, I guarantee you there's no science on it now to tell us what that true number is. I know that in general, residential is low trips in all of the current numbers that we have to look at, right? But I sit in my home office almost every day, and I look at the street, and with 8 units, they're probably going to easily have 20 to 30 trips a day of Amazon, UPS, FedEx, Uber Eats, you name it, coming and going. And there's only one in and out in that alley. There's no, they cannot stop on the street, which I think is going to be a problem no matter what, because I think we had another applicant the last meeting mentioned he had literally a parking spot or delivery area, right, for the UPS truck drivers, and they would never use it, right? They park in the middle of the street. So that's potentially a problem there. But I think if it was less, I don't know if the word dense is, because it's not, I'm not worried about the scope of the building. The size of the building, I think, is compatible with what we've built with the LDRs for the downtown. I just think the number of units within it, and it again causes that problem of, yes, it's a condo. So I talked to Mr. Costello the other day about it. It's a condo association, so they would have to figure out ways of providing in and out. But then how do they affect the businesses behind it, or what businesses could come in the future? Because they build this, and then behind it, that small Menon office, that's a developer, right? They can see potential development there, and we have to consider the impact on that whole block. So I'm not right now. I'm really undecided. I'd like to hear what the rest of the board has to say, but I'm just not crazy about that many units in that corner.
Great, thanks.
Well, may I
Sure,
just sum it up?
please.
Okay, so as stated, the maximum number of units is 10. And so taking that all into consideration, reduced it by 2. And you know what, I understand about Uber Eats, if you're home office, I'm home office. What's great about this, it's exactly what you want to encourage in the downtown area. If somebody has a home office there, they're going to get in, go down off their stoop out and walk right down to Atlantic Avenue and businesses and serve our businesses. Whether it be Uber Eats, I don't know. Maybe in the evening, but you're going to see these residents when they come here, they park. They'll probably rarely get in their vehicle unless they have to go to work. And what we've witnessed is people that live downtown don't get in their cars.
I agree with that.
And what's awesome is that it's a block from Atlantic. So to that point, and that's the Prime and FedEx. Look, those happen, but they don't happen. Look, these are residential. They do happen on residential streets.
Oh yeah, a lot.
But yeah, but their occurrences, boom, they're in and out. In fact, like you said. And there's you'll probably see it if you drive in some of those other businesses. They probably start right out on 4th Avenue, stop, run in, they're out. They're not going to go pull in the parking lot and find a parking space. They're on the clock, they're in and out. So in this case here, and there's actually pull-off areas for those. So we've addressed that. And then the loading, again, it's a rare occurrence. It's not like everybody's moving in and out each month. So,
Explain to me these pull-off areas for the drivers.
so that's actually for the rollout cars. They're not designated loading areas. But if you all have witnessed, I know I have, if there's a driveway and you want to pull off the side of it, instead of parking in a swell like in your
Right.
neighborhood, you could pull off into an area that's hard, a little bit off the alley. They could get out, run in, and you still have at least, so remember, the alley's 20 feet wide. This is 5 feet. A vehicle is typically 8 feet wide. So even if they pull off 4 feet into that 5-foot area, you still have that 16-foot clear for vehicles to drive by. So
That helps.
That's it?
That helps a little bit, yeah.
Okay.
I also have some concerns. I think one is going back to the alley and talking about that a little bit more. The other is just because we can build to a certain parameter on every site plan doesn't mean we have to max out the height for every site plan. And part of the fact that Delray is what Delray is that it's not, and while the staff does an excellent job, and I'm always impressed every time to try to make it more walkable or prettier by landscaping or having a larger area to get through, I fear that every time we walk past or every building or every small one-story building is taken down and we put 4 stories up, that it's going to feel like Manhattan pretty soon when we're walking through every brownstone. And so one of the concerns that I have for the alleyway, that being said, or actually one more thing with that, when you have the tower element, and although that's approved through our parameters, we don't always have to do that. So that extra setback would probably make it feel, in my opinion, less tall and full. But the alleyway is really the thing that concerns me, because I think that while the other 2 things I mentioned are hard, if you are stuck behind a truck that's moving somebody in, or it's nice to think that they're going to use those pull-offs. In my development, I got stuck and had to wait 20 minutes when I was rushing to the airport because my father fell and broke 7 ribs. And the air conditioner on my neighbor's unit broke, and instead of using the pull-off, they needed to have the truck where the truck was easy to have it up, and there was no way for me to get out of my garage. And so while we think that people are going to use it, as you mentioned, we could build the best loading facility. It could say Amazon packages here, and that does not necessarily mean they're going to use it. So I have some concerns about the alleyway and making sure that there is still an ebb and flow of traffic, that especially for fire department or law enforcement to get through. So that's a concern of mine.
if I may.
Yes,
So
please.
as this went through the SEPTED review and so forth, so SEPTED review, they had no concerns with it. That's crime prevention through environmental design. The fire department had no concern, no additional comments regarding it. They felt very comfortable. They understand these things occur. They're not a daily occurrence. And I believe that in this case here, where the alley's going to be 20 feet wide, and it is short term, you're not blocked. There's a way for a vehicle to get around. Just like if you go down a residential street, there's a truck, you can drive around. So in this case, that's why we widen our side. Our alleys aren't 16 feet platted. We're going to 20 feet, and they're to be built out to that ultimate limit. And so to that point, I think in this case, to think about the pull-up, what I'm saying is there is a little extra space. So even if you get a couple wheel over a couple feet, it still clears up some space. With regard to the elevation, based on code, so the Fifth Avenue elevation and the alley elevation, they have that additional, they meet the setback requirement on the fourth floor. So they actually do the wedding cake. So really, and with this architectural style, the only areas are those two facing First Street to provide that. And it actually provides a nice architectural relief.
Okay, thank you for that, because I thought
It's
it's those two columns.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a light color, so I'm sorry,
Okay.
but the two light blue rectangles are the only area that's actually encroaching.
Oh, nice touch.
The rest of it is outdoor seating area, exposed rooftop.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'm glad that I brought it up. Thank you. I think that's it for me.
All right. Mr. Brown?
I think it's a beautiful project. I think the architecture is wonderful. I think it's a great infill project, and congratulations. And it's interesting to see townhouses now in Delray going to 4 stories. You know, we had probably 20 or 30 years of 3-story townhouses, starting with, you know, Cannery Row and Mallory Square and so forth. And now they're going to 4-story because people want to be on the roof, and that's what it is. So congratulations to the developer and the builder, and to you, Costello. It's an excellent job, and the staff you had some very nice comments. So I'm all for it.
Thanks. Mr. Strong?
Yes, sir. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about the alley and the loading. And Jeff, you and we talked quite a bit about this. I believe it was on Friday. I believe staff mentioned that there are 2 additional spaces inside of the garage, correct? And you all mentioned something about removing those spaces and making them loading zone.
Not making them loading. There's not enough room.
Okay.
But so sort of 2 separate issues, but they are related. In terms of the interior of the garage, the applicant's proposing 18 spaces, plus we allow them to count the 2 new on-street spaces towards their total calculation. So they're providing 20 parking spaces, but they're only required 18, so they have 2 extra. In our opinion, it's a little bit unnecessarily constricted the way that the garage is designed in terms of allowing access to the units when assuming every parking space would be full. There's really no way for anyone with a large object to get into the unit entrances because there's no space within the garage that's not already accounted for with a vehicle that's going to be parked there.
Right.
So our suggestion, because they have 2 more spaces than they need, is to remove those and replace them with just a walk-through path so that you can bring your couch or bring your groceries or any large object to actually get it to your unit, so you don't have to walk around to the sidewalk, have that sort of visual impact on the public realm, and then enter through your front. The issue with the alley, or there's, you know, we've discussed the issue with the alley, but there's 2, those yellow rectangles,
Right.
There's 2 sort of indented areas. The primary purpose, staff, we asked them to add those so that there was a dedicated area for their trash cans to be staged during pickup. But that only happens a couple times a week. So during the periods when it's not being used for trash pickup, that could theoretically be used as a sort of de facto loading zone, even though it doesn't comply with the dimensions for smaller vehicles like Amazon trucks, UPS, etc. Our concern is that those aren't big enough to fit the larger moving trucks. So it's in those instances of large trucks, however frequent that is, there may be some conflict with the alley.
Okay. So my question, Jeff, if you all were to remove those 2 parking spaces, and I believe, are they on First Street?
No, interior to the
Interior
garage.
to the
Interior,
garage.
right.
Yeah, so I highlighted 2 of the compact spaces as just a suggestion, but it could theoretically be any of them.
So what impact would that have on the project if you were to make that, remove those spaces and make them walkways?
So our client's desire is that there is the ability for guests to park in the garage. However, to note that each resident will have a designated space in front of their entrance.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody comes to deliver a refrigerator. They're coming into my unit. I'm going to move my vehicle. Now, I just moved a water tank into my house 2 minutes.
Okay.
So what they do is they come in, they can move their vehicle out, and actually it's either going into a guest space or there may be another space of theirs. I mean, that's assuming everybody has 2 cars. Then they can load right into the unit they could wheel it up into that space. Now, even if you designate that, you have to go down the 3-foot wide sidewalk, and I know that was a concern. The staff is about the ability to get by the cars, and so we did have it increase the width, so we had a curb, so the walkway could be 5 feet in a case where there's a car not parked there, just to provide more maneuverability in that case. But if you look at it, if those are the designated, that's where everybody's supposed to go. Then they got to go back down through there. Yeah, it's 3 foot wide, but it seems like to have the more direct access to the unit from the reserve space would make more sense, in our opinion. And that's where, look, he's the developer, he's building this, and he's probably has his analysis on what clients would prefer, how many spaces per resident. But we felt it was important, given we're in the downtown, we just heard about parking, to at least as much as we can on site.
Okay.
And then again, these are rare, these don't happen on a daily basis. So that's all.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Malika?
I think it's absolutely beautiful. I'm only really sad that the car place has to go away. I hate losing a business, although it sticks out like a sore thumb, right? But it's been there and people are working there, so that makes me sad. But the place is beautiful. I think the architecture is lovely. Congratulations. So the spots the highlighted spots, those are for the trash cans, you said? But could hypothetically be used for a truck to pull in for a moment? But they're not big enough for a moving truck, correct? Can you make them bigger?
You know, I don't want to speak for the engineer, however, and you don't want to park on a sidewalk. However, those are sidewalks that we provided going from the, do you have a highlighter? This one keeps changing the slide for me.
You can go
Yeah.
over and point, you can reach it.
So there's walkways. He's probably sitting there wondering, what's he gonna say? So, these come directly out, and we wanted to provide landscaping. So these walkways come right out here. And we did want to provide landscaping up against the building. You know, it can't go all the way up to it. The building's set back 10 feet. And so you want some landscape material up against the building. So whether or not, you know, that's just a 3-foot walk, or the ability to do that, I think we could look at it, but it's really tight to do that. We had a parallel parking space in there before, and it didn't quite work out well. So we reduced it and said, you know what, this kind of accomplishes both. No, it's not a full parking space, but at least you could get the vehicle off in those rare occasions that we don't need. That contrast, the rollout carts are only here twice.
Right, exactly. And I don't have a problem with the two spots in the garage because those are guest spots, right? We may or may not have guests. And he's right, you're going to pull out if your refrigerator's going to be delivered.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add two things to your question. So as it relates to the size, we looked at all the U-Haul trucks, right? And as Julian stated, the largest size is 26. Everything else fits within the 25. And so almost everything else is going to fit within that area. And then with the, as Jeff was saying, there's foundation planting that happens along the side of the building. So as Julian also stated, we took a lot of care to work the entire circumference or the entire perimeter of the building with both landscaping and pedestrian access. And so we have, it goes from that yellow highlighted area to a walkway that's 3 feet wide. And then we also have the landscaping. So you can actually, as a pedestrian, go the entire perimeter of the building.
Okay. All right, I think that's all my questions.
All right.
What do you have?
I took a lot of look at this because it has things that aren't standard, shall we say. I discussed this with Mr. Costello, and I looked at it, and I looked at, you know, the big problem with the alley is the neighbors on the other side of the alley. That's their only access to their business, and I think there's two, but anyway. But I do think that the 18 plus the 2-foot dedication plus 5 feet is big enough to allow a one lane to go by if there's a truck there. Unless, I mean, if you get a 26-foot long moving truck, I don't know, you're going to block the alley.
Well, that's the thing, is they're not wider than 8 feet, you know.
Yeah, but if it won't fit into the 25-foot thing,
well, that's where, yeah. So in a case like that, they could pull up. There's ways they angle the ramps too, but in a lot of time that's one of those higher trucks where you have the ramp. But they do have them. But the thing is, even if it had to in that short period, you have a full lane that's through it. So the driveway across from the northern one is Menon.
Yep.
It's 24 feet wide, their driveway. The one to the south, the mixed use building, their driveway is 24 feet wide. So in essence, you have an extensive paved area right
Okay.
in there that they would be able to get in and out if they needed to. Because again, you have a full lane of traffic that you could get by, even if you had a vehicle back there. Now, we're just talking about those situations. You know, that's and we feel it's going to be clear for that short. It's not a daily occurrence.
Right. And you talked about the documents are going to help ameliorate this, and I would assume that's in terms of coordinating the times of use?
Right.
Or any, I don't know what else you could
Well,
do?
yeah, there's situations in some documents where you can only move in and out at these particular times.
Yeah, okay.
And so obviously, trash picks up or in the morning in 99% of the times in the downtown area. In fact, they're even before anybody wakes up. So,
Yeah.
but the good thing, the loading aspect, you have a mixed use development that is not a restaurant to the west side. Menon's
Right.
an office use, so they're small vehicles.
Okay. Regarding the, let's go to this, the variety of sizes. I think that's a really valid argument. Unfortunately, I don't think in an 8-unit building you can really deal with it. And maybe I'll talk about that at the end of the meeting, a little, my opinion on what kind of housing is being built in Delray. But I think they're adequate there. I basically, everything I think is ameliorated. The walkway thing inside with we're talking about removing 2 of the parking spaces. First of all, I don't think you should count those 2 on the street as their parking spaces, because I can go park there. Anybody can go park there. I think the 18 that they have inside should be what we count. And I think what Mr. Costello says makes more sense. If you have reserved the parking spaces so that the owners park in front of their doors, if then they want something delivered in there, they can move their car and have direct access. If you take those 2 parking spaces out that you have highlighted in red, as he said, you still have to go in and then you gotta go down the 3-foot walkway to get to your door. So you kind of haven't really accomplished very much as far as I can see.
Yeah, so just briefly on the on-street parking, typically if it's existing, we don't allow them to count it. The way the code is written, if there's none existing and they're adding it, then we give them the benefit of that for guest parking.
Okay, but
But
it kind of doesn't matter.
Sure, point taken.
We're not objecting to the code.
And then in terms of this, so our thought was, because we had a long discussion through the review process about this, and they brought up the idea that the owner could move. Our thought was, well, where is the likely place for them to move? Probably the alley, which kind of creates a sort of furthering of the issue of obstructing the alley. There's just not a really convenient place for those vehicles to go other than the alley. So we felt that if they at least have a clear path of access from the garage, even if they if they park in the drive aisle because they know that they can quickly get a large piece of whatever from the drive aisle into their unit, then at least they're only inconveniencing the other residents of that building. But if they're required to park in the alley because they can't get it in the units from the ground floor, then that sort of spreads that, inconvenience out to others.
To me, I would pull my car out and leave it in the drive aisle in there.
And I do want to be clear that it's not a code requirement. If it was a requirement, it would be framed as a waiver.
No, I understand. I
It's
understand.
just more of a suggestion that we thought was a
and
better
I want
trade-off.
to say that I don't think I agree with your suggestion, but I don't think it's a bad suggestion. I mean, but I think that the other, I don't know, my option, I mean, my thought was what we said, and sir.
Yeah, I was just going to add that some of these things have even come up with some of my investors who have talked about, what ifs, and they said, what if someone throws a party, right? And where are those people going to park? And so,
Yeah.
like I'm doing right now, I'm not allowed to park on the property as it exists today, and so I park in the iPick, right? It's basically just across the street, and they have a lot of public parking that's available.
Okay, yeah. Anyway, I just think that I don't agree with your solution.
Sure.
That's all I'm
No
saying.
worries. Yeah, understood.
And I started to, but, and then the last thing is, the tower encroachments. And I think those towers that are encroaching are part of what makes the architecture work. And they're absolutely, basically necessary because the architecture is really nice. And if you took those out somehow and put the setback there, you would kind of be destroying the building as far as the architecturally. So I mean, maybe you could have 6, but you could also have 10. And
I didn't have a problem with the architecture once I realized that it was staged back, but
Right.
sometimes what people will do, or I've seen in front of us, is they'll put that tower feature in so they don't have to do any of the setbacks and call it some design feature.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that's where I thought it was coming from, but they had an added, so I just wanted that on the record. They gave an adequate, and I appreciate the architecture, definitely. But
if you look at the picture, you can see it's just it because personally, thank God it's not masonry modern.
That's what I wanted to say.
And
wanna
you
thank
start
them for
chopping
that.
off the architectural details, and you're left. That's what you're left with. And I think it's much better the way it is. If there are no further comments, could someone make a motion, please?
Let's do this. Move approval of a Level 3 site plan application request for 102 Southeast Fifth Avenue, including architectural elevations and a landscape plan to construct a 4-story, 8-unit residential development, finding that the request is consistent with the land development regulations and the comprehensive plan.
Second.
A motion by Ms. Malika, second by Mr. Brown. Ms. Miller, would you call the roll, please?
Jeffrey Meiselman,
Yes.
Chris Brown,
Yes.
Deidre Strong,
Yes.
Mitch Katz,
Reluctantly, yes.
Allison Thomas,
reluctantly, yes.
Judy Malika,
Enthusiastically, yes.
Gregory Snyder.
Yes. Record show it passed 7-0.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Mr.
Really
Costello.
appreciate it.
Congratulations.
Board. Thanks to staff again. Really appreciate
And thank
it.
you very much, Julian. Appreciate all the hard work that you guys do. Okay, having finished that, reports and comments, staff. Ms. Duzzery.
Yes. No
Okay.
comments other than our next 2 meeting dates, April 21st and May 19th.
Meeting
April
dates.
21st and May 19th.
Okay.
And also we want to welcome
Hi everyone, my
Daniela
name's Danny,
Vega. She's our new board attorney. We of course are sorry to see Mr. Bennett go, but Daniela is wonderful and we are happy to have her with us.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're happy to have you.
Great. Okay, let's
Great to have
let's go board comments.
Nothing at this time.
Mrs. Strong? Mr. Brown?
Nothing.
Ms. Thomas?
Happy St. Patrick's Day. Other than that, nothing.
Mr. Katz?
I do want to go, but I do want to ask, is it ever, after talking to both applicants about the plats, has it ever been thought of making that an administrative action, subject to, confirmation by the commission, just to make it easier on the applicants and the board as well?
We have not. The state statutes does say that it has to be approved by the governing body. So whether it would go on consent versus going on, going as a quasi judicial item is not something we've talked about before, though, but anything 3 or less that does not require a right of way dedication would trigger it to go. If it has a right of way dedication, it would have to go through the major plat process. So we
Right.
do have people that will sometimes opt to dedicate the right of way separately and then just bring it through as a minor. So people do find different ways to go through without the hearings, but we could look at that.
I'm just curious. I'm talking to both of them. One of them in particular is an elected official, was like, this is crazy.
It's a good question, though.
Yeah. Mr. Milo.
No comments.
Yeah, I want to kind of piggyback on that. I know there was a lot of effort made to simplify the approval processes last year, and I appreciate them. But I've said this before, and I'll say it again, but we keep getting this stuff in 2 separate pieces where you're not allowed to think about this piece while you're voting on this piece, and you're not allowed to think about that piece while you're voting on this piece, and it doesn't make any sense to me. And there ought to be a way to combine the plats with the site plans so that we can take the whole project at once. And a case in point would be, didn't come up tonight, but Mr. Schiller's little property at the corner of Linton and Congress. Had there been an intent by the owner to put a particular business in there,
Thank you.
we would have been voting on a zone change, and we wouldn't be allowed to look at what that business was. And it doesn't make sense. And then you get a site plan, two site plans are approved, and they come here for plats. Well, what are we gonna say, no to the plats, and
It's
then
already
they
been
can't
approved.
do the site plan?
But also, he could say that he's gonna put, for example, a Chick-fil-A in there, and
Yeah.
then sell it with the new zoning, and the Chick-fil-A doesn't go there anyway.
Yeah,
So, I
that's-
mean,
so-
right, there's a
You're-
double-edged sword for whichever one you're doing,
Well, but if they bring the whole thing as one package.
and then vote on per
Yes,
package.
we want it
I don't think that's
make a
rezoned,
comment
and-
on the
And here's our
rezoning.
site plan for Chick-fil-A.
So it would only be for that, this is hypothetical,
Yeah,
so it would
anyway,
only be for
that-
that Chick-fil-A.
that's just
But
what
I
I
don't think
think.
Might run
that's
into
part
like
of the.
spot zoning issues potentially.
Right,
Yeah.
if I could just make that comment on the rezoning issue, I mean, when you're doing a rezoning request and considering it, like we said, you have to consider the bundle of options, because you
Right.
never know when that's going to
That's
change.
right.
So that's why we do keep it separate.
Well, that's fine, like when there isn't one, but if there is,
But I guess we want you to consider that in the future, it can
Yeah,
still
I-
change. So that is why
You
the reason to
put
keep
that
it
in the
separate.
Yeah, okay.
report, right? You could see that.
and just, my last comment is, I noticed the, TAC timelines now on the staff reports, and I think that's, very good and very interesting. Obviously, that's feedback, based on feedback. Yep. Okay, Danny, it's your floor.
Well, just thank you all. And if you guys ever want to email me before the meetings, if you have any questions, that'll be great. I'm always free to speak with you all.
Great.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you very much, and we'll look forward to seeing you. This
You got a good
meeting's
boss to work
adjourned.
for.
Go get out.
I said that though.
7:30.